there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Coffee on the Coast. I am constantly impressed with the people on the coolest coast that live in Manitowoc County, and I'm very impressed with what this young man has to say. I have to call you young because you just told me how old you were, and I couldn't believe it. Anyway, RJ Skrepenski is here, and I'm going to let him go into what's happening here. He's got an amazing story. When you told me this before we turned the cameras on, I almost cried because it's just such a touching and moving story and how this whole thing has gotten started. So let's talk about what's happening, RJ. Why are you sitting here right now?
Well, I'm sitting here now because I was carrying on a conversation with an educator, which is not unusual in the beginning of a school year. So I tag on to a couple of people and ask them how the school year is going, what kinds of situations are happening with the children. And this particular educator is a kindergarten teacher. And she was saying the standard stuff of having 26, 27 children in her classroom. And she said that there was one student who sticks out above the most. And I'm thinking it's probably because they have some crazy hair or they're bouncing off the walls. But she went on to tell me the story of this 5-year-old girl who is in her class who is bright and wide-eyed and eager and loving and, emotionally needy maybe. So she said she makes sure she sets time aside every day for this little girl. And then she told me the story that the classroom had won an opportunity to have the principal come in, read a story to the kids, and to bring cookies. And that led to 25 kids bouncing off the walls with excitement, not only for the the principal coming in, but also for the cookies.
Sure.
So she said she noticed that this little girl was off on the side and looking very thoughtful, probably. And she said she looked like she had tears in her eyes, and she came up to the teacher and she asked her if they had to pay for the cookies that the principal was bringing in. And of course, the teacher reassured her and said, honey, this is because of all your hard work. No, the cookies are free. So she said the next day, the same little girl came in with her fist clenched, and she came up to the same teacher and she opened her hand, and in her hand were 2 quarters, 2 nickels, and 3 pennies. And she asked if it was enough money for her to buy lunch, because it was all the money her family had. Well, of course, the educator assured her that she can have lunch at any time, every day, and it's always free. So we talked about that for a little bit, and the fact that this young girl is being raised by her father, who is a single parent, and he works, and she has 2 older siblings, and there's enough for the family to survive, but there's not much beyond that. So I'm not a great sleeper, so around 2 a.m. when most thoughts enter my mind, I really have to tell you, Jason, I was haunted by that story. Because here's a 5-year-old girl who should be worrying about, what television program's on,
right,
who's going to play with her, who suddenly is worried about finances and where her next meal is coming from. So I thought, what can I do? And I tried to compare where I was at 5, and obviously it's a generation or 2 away from this young girl. And I thought, we came home, there was an activity that my mom had planned, there was a snack, I hung out with my siblings, we watched TV and had a fine supper. And I thought, something has to change. And my first reaction was, the holidays are coming, so I can easily get gifts for those children, that particular family. So I then, about 2 seconds later, realized that if I asked people for help, we could maybe get more gifts for more families.
Sure.
So I went on Facebook the next day and I typed out a huge plea telling the story and asking people to put a face to giving this year. I called her the Cookie Girl because I can't share who she is and I can't share her educator. And then it was, how can we do this? Well, it's one child, one gift at a time. And the amount of children we reach depends entirely on who's willing to give something. And I thought about calling it like the Cookie Girl Challenge, but then I thought about the crumbs from the cookies. And I used the put a face to giving, and I said this year perhaps it has cookie crumbs around the edges of the mouth. And then I thought also that cookie crumbs often fall to the floor and can fall through the cracks. And that's the kids we're targeting.
Wow.
There are fantastic agencies that are out there for people who don't have resources and funds, but there's the working poor.
Yeah.
Single parents who are trying to pull it together, that for whatever reason, their kids aren't getting all the services that are out there.
Wow.
Well,
that's quite a story. But you know what? I hate to say it, I'm not surprised. You know, because there's a lot of that sort of need in our community. So you're organizing an effort this winter, this Christmas, which I think is probably pretty hurry-scurried to get it in this winter, but you want this to be an ongoing thing.
I would love that to continue.
And so I'm really interested in hearing how people can get involved, because people hear stories like this all the time, and then they're like, okay, I give my money to this or to that, but how can I really help and get it straight to the individual that needs it, straight to the kid that needs it? And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
That's exactly what we're shooting for.
So how can people get involved? What kind of things do you need? Is it monetary donations? Is it gifts? Is it food? How can we help?
Well, my first thought was that it was going to be in the form of gifts, but I've had people reach out via my personal Facebook page and say, we have food. We will send donations of money. And while we're not set up to have this be an official business, we're certainly not going to turn anything away. I had a young friend of mine speak to me about it, and she and her husband are restructuring their lives, and they don't have a lot, but she kiddingly said, I can bake. So I thought it would be great for whatever amount of gifts we give for us to attach a homemade cutout cookie. So she and her family are in the process of planning, and they will be baking 300 cutout cookies for us so that we can include them in the gifts, so that we don't lose sight of the Cookie Girl story. Also, there are people who have offered to wrap things, because we have to receive everything unwrapped, and then there will be wrapping, because that's part of the fun, I think, at Christmas for young people.
Yes.
It can be in any way you want. We will need people to deliver things. We'll need people to organize the donations. We will need checklists for who is getting what and what age groups are being targeted.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole slew of people who just want to give gifts.
Yeah.
And we're going to say no to any of it. We're going to take every bit we get, whether it's in kind, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whatever they're willing to give, we're going to accept.
So you're not going to say no to anything that comes in.
Nope.
So how do people get in touch with you to get you stuff, to help with this effort? Because it sounds awesome. This is the type of thing that I'm into, and I really want to push this out there. So how can people get in touch?
Well, right now, the best way to get a hold of me is through my personal Facebook page. You can private message me. I will be willing to share stories, ages, and genders. Of course, I'm not going to say any names, because we're not about exploiting anybody during this. This is just a matter of who we can help, how many can we help, and how soon can we get it going.
Yeah.
We're going to do the housing of it mostly right at the moment at the Southfield Learning Center. Which is what I do in my full-time work.
Sure.
But I want to make sure people understand that this is not specifically for the Southfield families. We're reaching out to every school and agencies to say, who's falling through the cracks? How can we get to those kids? So while it might take place at Southfield, it's going to be much more far-reaching than our complex.
Awesome. Awesome. And what are we calling this?
Well, we're calling it the Cookie Crumb Project, which which is a double take. You know, the little girl with the cookie, and the fact that crumbs from cookies can fall through the cracks, and those are the kids we're targeting.
Yes. Wow.
I know.
It's commendable, and it's an undertaking, and I know how these things work. It's just a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. So I appreciate what you're doing and what you're trying to do, because I was once one of those kids that you're trying to help, and I really appreciate that. I have a place in my heart for that. So everybody out there, this is what makes the Coolest Coast cool. this is the real work that we do to build a community. And I'm so excited about it. I think this is a great thing, and this is how it starts, with a couple of people doing something awesome and you joining in. So what we're going to do is we're going to put RJ's information on the bottom here. Contact him through Facebook Messenger, correct?
Absolutely.
And get involved. And you know, if you can donate anything, that's great. Monetary, they'll go out and buy presents, right?
Absolutely.
Anything like that, because really this is such an important part of our community. There are poor people, okay, which I've been one for many years, and then there's the working poor, and sometimes they fall through the cracks, and that's a really interesting analogy for your effort here, and that's what we're trying to help. Just give them that extra holiday push.
Perfect.
Into the right direction, into positivity, and like somebody is looking out for you, and we care about our community. That's awesome, RJ.
Great, Jason.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks.